The former BBC Newsnight presenter Emily Maitlis decided to make a public speech in defense of her impartiality, but in the same speech, somehow she managed to show her left-wing bias. Hello everybody, welcome to the first video of the day. We're going to come to you guys every half an hour with a lot of news updates. First things first. Emily Maitlis, you guys remember her? She was on BBC Newsnight, and a while ago, back in during the lockdown days, she did a very biased and forward monologue on her show on the BBC. It's not just about the Ofcom regulations, but also the BBC's Royal Charter preventing these sort of stuff. Decided to go completely against, at the time, Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson, the so-called People's Government and everything else. Now she made a speech yesterday at this TV festival, Edinburgh TV Festival, and I'm going to show you some of the sections of this speech because she showed her anti-Brexit views, even small c conservative views, and also, generally speaking, anti-anything that's not left-wing.
Here in the UK, we spent early summer watching the havoc at Dover Customs meet with a wall of silence around Brexit. Those who promise to get Brexit done can't mention it because it clearly isn't. Their insistence on third nation status has meant passport checks and horrendous waiting times. Labour avoids talking about Brexit because it's decided, rightly or wrongly, to distance itself from Remain.
The havoc of Brexit. And so interestingly enough, this monologue, this speech was about the frustration that the mainstream Oxbridge-going presenters of the lamestream media, that they were frustrated because they couldn't really show their true views. They couldn't really scrutinize Brexit. They couldn't talk about Brexit or criticize it. Are you kidding me? For years, since 2016, you guys consistently spent every single day criticizing Brexit, criticizing the Brexit vote, and people who were Brexiteers. You're still doing it. But yet now she's the victim. It's like Meghan Markle all over again. Me. But then she also talked about how this country is going under Boris Johnson and the Conservative government. We're going to the hard right dictatorial system. Yeah.
This isn't normal, or rather, it shouldn't be. Things that for many decades were givens, the checks and balances on the executive, the role of the judiciary or the civil service or the electoral commission, a media free from interference or vilification, now appear vulnerable. We're seeing politicians move in directions that are deeply and clearly deleterious to basic democratic government.
She's now the beacon of hope and democracy. So the agenda that since 2016, Brexit and Trump and everything else that happened, these people put everything in the same category and say, well, Boris Johnson is overweight and blonde, so that means that he's the next Trump. That's not how it works. This government is not even close to being right-wing. The only thing that we had was people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and a few others who talked about draining the swamp of the establishment and reforming the civil service or the electoral commission that we actually on this channel today. We're going to talk about that later on as well. From the perspective of people like Emily Maitlis, that means you are destroying democracy. Seriously? Do you really think giving more power to the state, like the electoral commission, like your Ofcoms, like your civil service in general, that's democracy? No. But she also talked about that incident with Newsnight when she did a monologue against Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings. She had a bit of a cry because the government called the BBC and criticised them, even though that was a normal thing to do. Tony Blair called the BBC when they crossed the line. Gordon Brown did it. David Cameron did it. It's a relationship between the state and the BBC, and it's a bit dodgy anyway. I don't like it, but it is what it is.
A phone call of complaint was made from Downing Street to the BBC News management. This, for context, is not unusual. It wasn't unusual in the Blair days, far from it, in the Brown days, in the Cameron days. What I'm saying is, it is pretty normal for government spin doctors to vocalise their displeasure with journalists. What was not foreseen was the speed with which the BBC sought to pacify the complainant.
Oh, so you're now criticizing your own BBC bosses, saying, well, why was it that they surrendered so quickly? I can tell you why. Because this time, it wasn't just some sort of bias against Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. You literally offended the whole of the British public. You guys consistently on Newsnight and the rest of the BBC shows as well have been criticizing people who decided to vote to leave the European Union. And actually, in fact, we have a perfect example of when she was on Newsnight and Rob Little was actually there to debate about the 17.4 million people who voted to leave. This happened.
You cannot but help it that there are 17.4 million people out there who are distressed.
So this is about them.
And they're not
this
all
is
like
about
you.
them.
This is not all like you.
That
I
they're
respect a lot of
distressed.
them.
They're distressed at the betrayal. And one of the things they're most distressed about is the way the BBC has behaved in the last 2.5 years.
You write this in your book. You say that everyone has been portrayed as xenophobic and racist. I'm simply using your language.
You're doing it again.
I know.
Yes, you're doing it again.
Do walk into it a bit.
She just said it, and he said, "You're doing it again," and she's like, "Yeah." So you are doing it again. And the fact that at the beginning of it, she said, "So this is just about the 17.4 million people, right? It's just about them." Yeah, it is about them. It's called the will of the people. And you did not really represent that chunk of society. It's not even a chunk. It was a majority. It was a majority that could have been even bigger than 52% if it weren't for Project Fear of the Remain campaign scaring off some of the Eurosceptics who decided to last minute vote Remain because, again, they went with the British blood of we're scared of change. You scared them so much. Otherwise, that 52% should have been 60% at least, 65%, because every opinion poll up to the referendum showed that Eurosceptic side were much bigger in this country. But it is Emily Maitlis, and some people would say, why are you even giving him the attention or airtime? Yes, I know what you mean, but at the same time, if we don't talk about it, these guys are already getting platformed anyway. That speech is now all over the place. On social media, on mainstream media, we have to counter these arguments. Well, I know it could get annoying that we have to give them attention, but you have to. Otherwise, for decades, we allowed one side of the political spectrum to completely dominate the narrative, and we stayed quiet. We should not remain quiet, and we should focus on fighting for our values. That's why I've launched our anti-globalist movement, Build Back Britain, against WF's Build Back Better. You could find the link in the description. You can actually get your own Build Back Britain t-shirts and merchandise as well. Now, we are going to obviously join this with the upcoming nationwide tour. We are going to go to London and Manchester, Cardiff initially, and then we're going to also organise the rest of the tour in the coming weeks and months. Thanks to you guys for watching. We're going to come back in half an hour. We're going to tell you about what's going on in the European Union. There's some chaotic situations going on in Greece and Germany. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Tousi, and we are the media.